Okay, so we're back, and I'm working on our pocket door how-to here, and it's kind of a little subset of our house build project. At the end of the last video, you saw where I was prepping the track for the installation into the rough opening. So let's take a look at that, and I'll show you what we've got. So what we've got is all those little spots where I told you we were putting the we were going to be putting the screws to hold the track up into the frame. We've got two there, one in the middle, and one on that end right there. And basically this one will have a 2x4 face board here, so that'll lend support to that, and all that's just way more than enough support for the track assembly. So of course we've got our header in already, and then we'll put our cripples in at the very end when it's be the last thing we do. And at the moment, still, you know, everything's still loose at the top there, so we can jiggle it around to get it in a final state of plumb. So now the next bit is to go ahead and hang the little thin sections of what the drywall will nail to, which are these little, I call them studlets, because they're very thin and they make up for the you know, the thickness of the wall right there. So anyway, and this crazy thing right here, this is a nailer that I put in because we have an intersecting wall right here, and it just happened to be some 1x12 that I had laying around. It was just going to waste, so I used it. It's a bit overkill. It's obviously too wide for the purpose, but it does the job, and I didn't have to buy it, so I already had it. And you always, in any of your corners, whether they be vertical corners or up top side, you always want to have something good and sturdy to hook your drywall to. Otherwise, the joints will crack over time. So anyway, let's move along here. Okay, so what we have here is we have our little studlets, or whatever you want to call them, and they have a little bit of wood here made into the metal, so you have something to screw your drywall to. And of course you want to be mindful and use, you know, shorter screws around these. And what they have is they have these little feet that hook to the bottom and will screw down to the floor in the right place when you get them set. And these hold these little mini studs right in place where they need to go to make the actual pocket that the door slides into. So what we do is we have that, and it will sit in the pocket just like that and attach to the top of the track that we just put in. So let's get over to that area here and show you how we put that in. Okay, the first section of this little mini stud arrangement has to butt right up against the end of the track. Now, this basically is going to be your door opening, and of course this will depend on what size door you have. As I said earlier, this can be used for any size door down to a 24-inch. So, well, I guess you could go smaller, but I don't know why. But anyway, so depending on where it would be cut, or in this case not cut, because the I'm using a full-size door. So what we'll do is we just set this in there where it's nice and flush up against this. And what I like to do is to pre-drill this piece of wood so that it doesn't inadvertently split. And then we'll just get an angle like that. Red. At the very end, we'll plumb this up and make sure everything lines up with the door after we've secured everything in, and we make sure we've got everything nice and plumb the way we want it. We want to make as few adjustments as possible by getting the frame right. And you have that luxury when you're building new construction. A lot more difficult when you're doing a remodel. I mean, it can be done, but it's just a wee bit tougher. It takes more time. And of course, this really takes more time than hanging a standard door, but it's definitely worth the effort. Okay, so now we're going to get ready to put our hardware on the top of the doors here. And what we've got is basically one of these. Okay, and what that does is that snaps into this, and that's what the door hangs on. We'll see more about that later. But these here we have to screw onto the top of the door. So let's get that bit done. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to go ahead and get this mounted on here, and we'll want to center it within the thickness of the door. Of course, the holes are elongated, so you have some adjustment here. But you also want to go in from the end of the door. Now, there is a spec in the instructions. I forget what it is. I think it's like 7/8 or 1 7/8, something like that. It's not really terribly critical. You just go in, you just want to balance the load of the door on the tracks, which in these cases isn't much because these doors are very light. And then put your clips or your latches facing the same way. I put them facing out, so if I ever have to take the door off, I can remove the door from the track. I can do it from when it's mounted. So just set it in just a wee bit and center your screw in the hole there once you get it where you want it to go, and get it started. And you see how I have my door set on a chair and pushed up against something immovable over there, so when I'm pushing on the screw gun here, the door is not going to walk away on me. And then, let's turn that down. And then once you get it close in, snug her up. And then proceed to put your other ones in there. Again, center them in the hole so you have some adjustment if you need it. And then we'll put the other two in and put the other one on, and then we'll be ready to hang the door on the track. Okay, so now we've got both of our clips mounted onto the door. And of course, it goes without saying, but make sure you always put them to the top of the door. On a 6-panel door, that'll mean the side with the 2 small panels. So let's go over to the frame and start hanging it. Okay, so now we want to hang our little trolleys in here. And just a little bit of information. These things are adjustable in and out to raise or lower the door for making adjustments, but out of the box, they're even. They're set to dead even, so when they're hanging in the track, the door will hang technically plumb as long as your track's level. So, and I've used 8 tracks thus far, and every one of them's been perfectly level, so their quality control is good. So anyway, what we want to do now is we want to insert our little trolleys in here. I can do that because I haven't put this stud here yet. So, and with the trolley being mounted inward of the edge of the door, if the door comes over, you know, it'll never roll off the end of the track. So what we'll do is set that about there, about there. And really, it's just a simple matter of lining it up and there it goes. Just clip right in, and you just kind of work this in the rest of the way and push, and there it is. Now, obviously, we're way out of kilter here. That's because we want to line everything up, plumb everything up first. See, that's actually pretty darn good where it sets. And then we'll double check it with the back side here. See how that lines up. And that's pretty good. I could probably come in just a skosh, but that's alright. That's not going to matter because that's hidden anyway. So we'll double check what we've got here. And that is excellent. Okay, so the next step is you want to make sure that these little mini studs are in line with the wall line so that your door doesn't hit these when they go to open or close. So in order to do that, it's a pretty simple matter actually. You just take a 2x4 and put it up across the opening and then butt these up to it. And then once we do that, we establish a line there. Then we'll just put our level here to make this plumb, and it's done. So I'll let you watch me do that as we go here. And what I'll do is I'll put my knee against this 2x4 and then line that up like so. I'll put my level on here and make this plumb. Now this one, once we get it to where we think it's plumb, then there's one last little bit that we do, and that's we open the door and check the door against the edge here and make sure that our line is straight. Now, if your track is plumb and everything's done right, then it should just automatically line up, which in this case it is, so we're good. I know some of this stuff may seem boring and anal retentive or excessive, but the more time you spend getting your frame and your rough opening right, the less adjustment you have to make later on to try to cover up mistakes. So, believe me, I've made plenty of those. So, now we'll screw this thing down. And we have it in place. There's 2 holes in that bracket there. And the next step we'll do is we'll put our little guide shoes in, and that's what holds the bottom of the door down in here, so it doesn't get there and walk back and forth like that. So what we'll do is we'll line our door up in the center of our track here. And I put them up as high as I can go to allow for the whatever flooring you're going to put in afterwards. There we have it. Now all we have to do is put our jamb in place. Okay, so this dimension here is 82 inches. So what you want to do is find you a good looking piece of wood that's, you know, reasonably pretty. Most of it's not going to show because you'll have some quarter round trim in there and all that, but still, you want a piece of straight wood that's going to go in here, and then you should just ever so slightly snug in there. It's a perfect fit. And then line it up. And you don't want to go crazy with the nails, because you know, you're just going to have to fill them in with putty later, because this will actually show in here. So just no piece of wood is perfectly straight, so kind of adjust as you go, pulling it where it needs to be. Sometimes you may even need to use a clamp, but in that case I'll usually opt for another piece of wood. Then I put 2 at the top. And there you go. That air compressor is noisy. Anyhow, once you get that nailed in place, then this will be the actual jamb that the pocket door closes against. And if you've done it right, it'll line up real nice without any visible obvious gap. Now, when we get into where we're starting to trim everything out, we'll have quarter round here that the door will kind of pocket into there. And then, of course, the hardware kit will have the little latch or whatever to lock it if you want. And when it's done right, like I said, it'll line up nice and even there with no unusual gaps. And the door will extend beyond this stud here. And then, of course, when you're finishing out your drywall, you know, you'll have a 3/4 inch piece of wood trim here bolted up against it. So, you know, you'll have about a good solid 1.5 inches of overlap where the door laps behind. And one thing that they do recommend, and this may dissuade some people from putting pocket doors in too, I don't know, but they recommend that you use 5/8 drywall. And that's really because, I mean, you can only make these little mini pocket studs so rigid. And you can see I can just sit here and squeeze it with my hand like this. So if you've got the real cheap thin drywall, you know, you go up here and you push against it, it's going to flex on you. Whereas the 5/8 drywall will be very much less so. Now, myself, you know, I've used a lot of 7/16 drywall or 1/2" drywall, but you know, given my druthers, I love 5/8 because, you know, it's more sturdy. You know, even on a stud wall, 16-inch centers, you know, 7/16 will still bow on you, but 5/8 won't. And it didn't sound a lot better than 7/16. So, you know, with us, you know, we live right next to a railroad track. So I'll have, you know, the brick on the outside of the house, of course, the extra insulation that we're going for, and then 5/8 drywall on the inside, which will make for a very quiet house. So, okay, so at this point now we're pretty much done with the pocket door. Went ahead and cut out the nails from the original studs, and then cut and nailed our cripples in there. And that way, if somebody at some point decides to load grand pianos up in the attic, it won't mess up the way our doors work. So, and I guess for those of you who may not know, the principle of a header is to basically transfer the load from there down and across both ways and down to the floor. This is actually called a king post, is what it's called, or a jack, and it just transfers the load down to the floor instead of bowing the middle there where the door is, which of course obviously would mess the door up. So, well, aside from a little more work on the front end, you know, pocket doors are, in my opinion, worth having, because like I said, they just make for so much more usable space in the room. But and the cost really isn't that much different, you know. Yeah, these tracks are kind of expensive. They're like $60 some odd for that track kit. But you figure the track kit, $60 some odd. The door slab is like $30. And, you know, so what is that? It's actually cheaper than a pre-hung door, you know, regular swing door, because their cheapest ones of those I've seen are about $128. So, you know, yeah, you pay a little bit more in labor in putting it in and attention to detail to get them right, but, you know, in the long run, they're just so worth it. So, and nothing like that nice, quiet, easy slide. And then when you open it all the way, you know, that was the other thing I neglected to mention. When all is said and done, you got to put your little rubber bumper stop there. That keeps the door from going whack when if you open it a little too energetically. So there you have it. So now it's time for the boring stuff. I have to clean up the mess. So stay tuned.